Welcome back to Shop Talk. I'm Dan Probanik with Chagrin River Outfitters. We're here once again with Scott and SA Pro Jeff Liskay. Welcome back, Jeff. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for the invite, Dan.
You got it, buddy. We're going to get into lines and running lines a little bit for the two-handed stuff. We talked a little bit in the last episode about rods and reels. Obviously, you got to put a line on it, right? A couple lines sometimes.
Yeah.
And that's another aspect of the two-handed game that, again, just lots of questions. And if we can help clarify some of that for the folks out there today, I think that'd be a big help.
Yeah. Every day, I'm sure you get phone calls. I get texts, and it's just like there's really no right answer, but there is a little bit of, direction that we can give them.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. So Skagit and Scandi, our area lends itself better to the Skagit Heads, sink tips, some bulky flies. Sometimes it just delivers that system a little better, right?
Yeah. Totally agree.
Yeah. What is a Skagit Head?
A Skagit Head it's such a simple system. It's basically the really simple form. It's like the belly part of a fly line.
Mm-hmm.
And it weighs, if you can imagine it, it weighs almost the same as your normal fly line would. It's like taking your same fly line, your normal fly line, and fold it over a couple, 2-3 times on itself, because the diameter stick, it's like a projectile, like a bullet is really what it is.
Yep.
Really not much taper to it. It goes anywhere from 15 feet to 30 feet, depending on what type of Skagit you get. But around our area, we get really short ones because we have small rods, small rivers, so we use shorter Skagit Heads.
Absolutely.
Comes in floating. It also comes in intermediate sink too. Sometimes we have to deal with a lot of aggressive surface currents, but you can get either one, and they'll both work in our area. Depends on our conditions.
It's not the prettiest casting, but it's effective.
It's controlled chaos.
Right, correct.
Yeah.
Correct. There are some Scandi applications in the area, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So that's totally out of the picture. So we'll talk about that a little bit as well. Before we get to that, a Skagit had something you pointed out to me that I thought was very interesting and made perfect sense once you explained it, is that a Skagit Head, you always want some kind of tip on the end, right? You don't want to go Skagit Head to like a leader or a short piece of mono to your fly, right? You want to have some kind of tip on there.
For sure. I think that's the number one thing that I see anglers do, or they get a Skagit Head or whatever, and they buy maybe just a couple tips, but they want to just practice casting. They put the mono leader on the end of the Skagit Head, and then it just doesn't work.
Oh, I did it. Believe me.
Oh, yeah. And I think we all did it at one point in time. But so because it's so aggressive at the front taper, the front portion of it, you have to always run a tip.
Right.
And that calms it down, but it mainly allows the energy to at least semi-transfer a little bit.
That energy needs somewhere to go.
It dissipates, yes. It needs to go somewhere. But always need to have a tip on it when you have a Skagit Head.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. I've seen what it does without it.
Oh, it kicks like a mule.
It's not good. It's not good. So I'm a kind of keep it simple, stupid when it comes to this kind of stuff. Scandi lines, to be honest, isn't something I know a whole lot about, just because I haven't had a whole lot of need to fish them. I would like to, but can you explain to us a little bit the difference between a Scandi and a Skagit?
It's real simple. It's a Scandi line is nothing more than if you take your Skagit line and you have a built-in integrated front taper to it.
So a little smoother transition.
It's a smoother transition, and it's built into the line.
Right, okay.
So in our area, because we have these runoff rivers, it's dirtier, we're generally using sink tips, like you said. It's like sink tips. But there are times that we have low water periods or whatever in our area that the Scandi line, because of the front taper, it's more like a beer truck to a Ferrari. We can use a Scandi line and use sinking leaders.
Okay.
So it's a little less aggressive, and they're more like not in your face, not so obnoxious.
Right.
So there are applications for a Scandi, but the line is built in, has a little taper to it, and it's not as aggressive,
Yeah.
And we generally, so if you go to a Scandi line or a Skagit line, it's generally, we would grain the rod a little lighter for a higher line speed. It's generally about 50 to 75 grains under your Skagit Head.
Okay.
And if you were going to say, well, how do I know the difference? Like Dan, I want a Scandi line now because I've got a Skagit, I got extra spool, right?
Right.
If you take your Scandi line and you try to cast it overhead, it would feel just like your normal single hand rod.
Yeah.
But where a Skagit that line, if you cast it overhead, it's going to feel like logging chain.
Just heavy and jumpy.
Heavy,
yeah.
it's really clunky.
Yep,
that's
for sure.
That's the one way to figure out, do I got my Scandi line right or not, even at the shop.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. So, Skagit heads, Scandi heads, sink tip, or some kind of tip. It could be a floating tip as well on a Skagit, but some kind of tip on the end there. So, that line you were just holding up there, that's just a Skagit head, correct?
Correct. It is absolutely just the head.
So, you can get these in, you can get them in with just the head, or you can get them with an integrated running line behind them, correct?
Absolutely.
So, running lines are obviously very important, depend on where you're at and what you're going to do with the different heads and different, even put it on different rods, etc. But first, a very important aspect that many people may not think about when it comes to the running lines is the diameter, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and why is that something we should be concerned with?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. When you first start out, everybody wants to cast like a hero, cast it out. So they want a thin running line,
right?
To cast as far as they can and shoot lines, because the fishing's got to be better on the other side of the river.
Always.
Even though it's only like a foot deep,
right.
It's still better over there because I can cast 65 feet. But so generally speaking, a thinner running line will, is basically you can cast real far, but you have to judge the diameter of the running lines and the thickness of it, because it actually has to have some resistance to the line to actually make the cast. So thin sometimes is not better all the time.
Sure.
So they range anywhere from 19 thousandths all the way up to 38 thousandths. So somewhere in that parameter, depending on your grain weight, for instance, you want to have enough diameter, to hold the line back to allow it to cast, and not spring around on you.
Right.
Easier to hold, but also
Correct.
maybe like you talked about full frame or an unfull frame reel where it doesn't get caught.
Yeah.
It's very notorious for guys that get a running line that's so thin they can cast, but it gets tangled in the reel a lot, or gets tangled in the wind. So thin is not always the best answer when it comes down to running lines. What have you experienced? What are the guys? There's mono, there's your traditional, but maybe we should just take a look at what's some of the go-tos that the guys have been using around here around the shop.
Sure. So you have your mono running lines, right? And then you have your more or less mono-coated running lines, most of them, right?
Right.
It seemed like the big thing out of the gate was, like you said, people wanted to cast far. I want to get that mono on there, let it rip, right?
Yeah.
I was never a big fan of mono. I've tried it. It has definitely some benefits for me, but I like personally, I'm a kind of a coated running line guy.
Sure.
I can grip it better. It doesn't slip as much. And like you said, we don't really need to cast that far. If distance was an issue, I would definitely be maybe lean a little more towards the mono. But for me, the handling and the little less tangling of the coated running line, just for my type of fishing, that's what I enjoy using. We probably in the shop here, it's probably a 50-50 split these days. A lot of the guys that were first, mono, have figured out, man, the mono, while it does lends itself to adding more distance, is a little harder to handle sometimes, especially when it gets cold.
Yes.
And some guys fish the mono when it's warmer and the coated when it's colder. So, again, it's one of those gray areas, right? It's what works for you.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'm an integrated running line guy around here, but which is coated. Yeah. But I will say, there are times when one of the attributes of the mono running line would be that it doesn't adhere and hold the water when you're stripping in.
Sure.
So if you happen to fish a little larger venue and you're doing a few strips, say maybe 6, 8, 10 strips or something at the most, maybe even 5 strips, the water will get on your gloves where the mono won't hold the water as much.
Yeah.
And so it's just one of those things where it's a comfort for me sometimes. I use the mono. Like you said, though, it's going to have some memory. You got to stretch it out. And then, of course, it's sort of like, oh, my gosh, I got to stretch it out. It tangles. But overall, it doesn't hold as much water, though. That's the only attribute to it.
No, that's an important factor for sure. So you mentioned integrated lines. So I'm a big fan of the integrated lines myself. Always have been, again, because again, we're not casting real far. You don't have that little, and by integrated, do you have an integrated line here?
I do, yeah. I've got that little essay, yeah. Check out
Right
this
here?
essay reel right here, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I can't see too good. So what do we have on here?
The Scandi. So it's a essay Scandi Light.
Yeah.
So you're peeling off the Scandi head.
This is the head here.
Right, there you go.
Yeah.
Keep peeling. There you go.
There we go, right here.
There it is.
Yeah. So basically, the head and the running line are connected.
All connected.
Right.
And then you're going to have a point here of a transition where
Yep.
you have a color change.
Yep. And that's a good
indication.
visual cue when you're casting.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
So what do you think? So the benefit with our areas is that a lot of times the fish are within a rod or a rod and a half away. And if you have a loop-to-loop system, because we have such small rivers around
Sure.
here or smaller venues,
Yep.
is that the loop is inside the rod.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a lot of times, their first cast out, I know it's going to be a good day or a bad day, is when I say we're going to get to a run and the guy casts right to the far bank right away.
Mm-hmm.
The guy that cast and rolls out just half the head
Mm-hmm.
and he fishes the first 10 foot of water,
Sure.
it's a good day.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to catch fish.
Catch a lot of fish there.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Right off the rod tip.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I like about the integrated. Plus, if early season, we do the strip swing thing.
Yes.
So we can strip effectively the fly to our visual point of confirmation with the integrated. So integrated, like you said, it's just easier to handle too.
Without
I like
that
it.
loop-to-loop
Yeah,
connection
click and
and going
click.
through the guides.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Like I said, I'm a big fan of these lines myself. So the integrated is, there's no loop-to-loop connection.
Yep. And it comes in Skagit or Scandi.
Correct.
So that's what's cool too.
Yeah. What do they offer in that? I'm a big fan of that.
So the Spay Light.
Spay Light
That's
Skagit.
the Spay Light Skagit, the
Yeah.
Spay Light Scandi. It's integrated. It's great. And what I also too like it is because our rods are crossover rods.
Sure.
I can use it for trout venues.
Mm-hmm.
So
there
I
you
don't
go.
want the loop to loop because I'm stripping streamers all the time.
Yeah.
I can cast it overhead, I
Yep.
can put it. So it's just an all-around better fishing line.
Yeah.
And it also has a little bit of a texture right here to keep the wear right along where you're going to basically have the rod
The
tip.
casting, yeah.
Yep. So it has a little more wear point to it
Little
too.
hinge point there.
Little hinge points always wearing. You're going to wear it
Yeah.
out, but
Sure.
that's okay. But those are the go-to lines for me, and it's becoming very popular because of that reasons too. The loop to loop is pretty much not a problem.
Yeah, and they're available integrated and just the heads too. So you best of both worlds.
Best of both worlds.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of them. We sell a lot of them. They're very good lines. So this is the integrated. Everything
Yes.
is kind of one piece.
Right.
We probably have somewhere around here a mono running line.
We do, the able.
The able. Here we go.
Yeah,
Here we go.
absolutely. So just show them the tip. Yep. So there's the tip section right there. So you always
Yep.
have to have that tip like you talked about.
Yep. Here's the head.
There you go. There's the head.
Yep. And then we'll get down into the
There's the
green
loop.
running line here.
Yep.
Yep. And what's the advantage of maybe having this loop-to-loop connection?
So you can change out heads.
Yeah.
So one of the disadvantages of having integrated would be if I wanted to change up during the course of the day to an intermediate sinking Skagit head,
Sure. Wintertime, getting a little slushy or...
a little slushy, or if I have a lot of confused current,
Yeah.
I could just flop out different heads.
Yep.
And so like the Scandinavian methods, they actually, have Scandinavian lines that are sinking and, intermediate sink. They change out the whole heads.
Mm-hmm.
Where in our area, we change out the tips. But when you push a 5 or 6 weight switch rod to its limits and you fish high flows or you can't fish a heavy tip,
Yeah.
I can switch to an integrated, a non-integrated line that allows me to get the fly deeper without
Slow
having
it-
to go to an 8 weight or something
Slow
like that.
it down a
Slow
little
it
bit.
down.
All that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, again, there's quite a few different applications with some of the different lines and different heads. And again, none of it's kind of what works for you, right?
There is no rules.
Yeah, yeah.
You could
for
ask
sure.
6 spay questions to 6 spay guys and get
Yeah.
6 different answers.
Yeah. Yeah, I know when I'm guiding, I'm changing everything out. I'm changing heads, I'm changing tips. I'm like, all right, we got to make this happen.
Yeah.
When I'm fishing myself, Not so much.
Just let it
put
roll.
a tip on and
Practice casting.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. That's great. So we got mono running lines, coated running lines, integrated and non, and anything else to know or talk about when it comes to, I mean, obviously there's a ton of stuff to cover, but I mean, we'll get in a little more depth and detail later on, but I mean, for just covering the basics here, for getting started.
It's really not, because there's just so much, as far as it goes like that. The best thing, just come into the shop.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a lot easier for you to come in the shop and just go over. You have it right there on the shelves and just, do a nice chit-chat, nice sit down. Especially during the week and the evening, I bet. It's a great time to come in.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. No, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
100%. Perfect. Anything else you would like to add?
No, I think we're good. I'm looking forward to getting on the water, and, we can do stuff like that, too.
Oh, man, me too. Me too. Great. Well, thanks again, Jeff.
Thanks for the invite, Dan, as usual.
Appreciate it. That's a wrap for this episode of Shop Talk. Look forward to seeing you again. Don't forget to check out ChagrinRiverOutfitters.com for upcoming events, guided trips, destination trips, and things of that nature.